which was interesting. So this guy goes after you. His name is Charles Christopher White Jr. Do you know who that is, Deli? Do you have any idea who that?
What?
Charles Christopher White Jr., also known as Moist.
Oh, penguins.
Yes,
Yeah.
you know penguins.
Yeah.
Okay, so I did not. Do you know? Did you know penguins?
That guy who looks like a homeless Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. He does look like homeless Jesus. His name is Penguins. It's also, what is this? Critical.
Moist Critical is his.
Moist Critical and then Or Critical.
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't know who this was, and then I click on the I see them talking about you with ranting, but he's very famous. He's got
Twitch
like
is one of the highest.
Yes, he's a streamer, he's a YouTuber, he's a Twitch streamer, he's a musician, and his channel has like millions and millions and millions of subs. And here he is. Who's he talking about? He's talking about you. Not very nice things. Okay, so I want to get your reaction to some of these. I saw this yesterday, and by the way, it's fantastic. Sometimes you have to watch things.
This is a Jedediah exclusive because I haven't even watched this video.
Yeah, sometimes I catch the guess. What can I say? All right, 211, let's go to that. So this is him. This guy is playing a clip now from whatever podcast, and then he's going to rant about you. So, okay.
Can't actually divorce. That's not a real thing.
Even though it might be like physically abusive.
You got to endure. People are too.
You want to stick in a relationship?
Are just, look, people nowadays are just. Everybody quits. Everybody gives up. It's too hard. I'm this XYZ. This is why I'm special. So I can up this entire situation based upon me being special.
The clown puts himself front and center here. You're looking at the chief entertainment for this episode. Fucking discount Walmart brand Sal from Impractical Jokers here. His name's Jonathan, and let me just tell you, he's got some opinions, and man, oh man, are they a stinker. So, the question is very simple. If there's an abusive relationship, an abusive marriage, should the marriage end? You know, if the woman is being abused, or even if the man is being abused. The woman who asked the question, her name is Melina, and she doesn't just make it exclusive to women getting abused. Men can also be victims of abuse, something that Jonathan heavily disagrees with.
Okay, let's pause it here. We've got a few. He is a weird looking dude. I'm not gonna lie. He's calling you Sal. By the way, I know Sal. I grew up in Staten Island with those Impractical Jokers. There was a slight resemblance in some of your sense of humor, but this guy talking about people's. Okay, reaction.
Well, I mean, first of all, that suit is Loro Piana. There's nothing Walmart about that suit.
I was just gonna say, you are the least likely person to be found shopping at Walmart. Just saying, but
that is certainly not. But I think that this guy has no idea what I'm doing. Because if we were just objectively lay out what our brands are doing side by side, I irrefutably know that every single day I'm working hard with my members in my community to make these men better people. I'm getting these guys jobs. These people are losing weight. They're finding girlfriends. They're finding wives. Okay. These guys are struggling with like traumatized issues that happened to their past that we're helping them get over. I know my conscience is clear. This guy can sit here and pretend to be some moral authority and manipulate the public opinion of me by saying like, oh, this guy, because I guess what they're trying to say is like, if a man is continuously beating a woman in a relationship. They're talking about
physical abuse. Yeah.
Right. So they're trying to say that I'm saying that if a man is continuously beating a woman in a relationship, that he and her should stay and endure the thing. That's not what I said at all. But I did say if there was one instance, because relationships, every relationship has fights. Every relationship has ups and downs. Anybody who says otherwise is a liar. Okay? There's conflict in relationships. Period. Even the happiest couples in the world, they have conflict. And anybody who denies that, like I said, they're lying. What I'm trying to say is that I think a lot of times, especially now in today's culture, where we're incentivized to divorce, women more so than men, and women are initiating 78% of these divorces on top of that. All I'm saying is that I think that a lot of these cases are when people are just like, they're just giving up. Because back in the day, like, you didn't have the luxury of giving up. And if you just look at the data, when you do divorce, everybody gets messed up and the kids are the ones that take the most damage. And I think that because right now, America is kind of in this place where everybody's like, yeah, I'm this me individual person. And then like, I live my life this way. Therefore, everybody should accept me regardless of like the negative consequences that come with this lifestyle as well. Like, I know Destiny and Melina, is that her name?
Yeah.
Melina, they are in an open relationship, but also has a 92% failure rate.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like, yeah, well, it works for us. We're not saying it will work for you. Well, I mean, like, with a 92% failure rate, like people are sitting around waiting.
Well, they also say that they wouldn't recommend that for other people, and that if you're going to have a child, don't do this. Like they're very open about that. So that to me means there is an acknowledgement that what they're doing is not ideal, you know, in terms of longevity.
Right. And so going back to the guy trying to smear me here, right? That's not what I'm saying. And I think anybody who thinks that I would say for a man to continuously beat a woman and a woman just to, you know, buckle down and tolerate it, sister. Like, that's not what I'm saying. So if anybody thinks that.
So my takeaway was this from the exchange. I think the meat of what you were getting at, in my perception, was that people give up on relationships too easily these days.
Everything.
They have a fight and suddenly they're on Instagram scrolling, and the ex-boyfriend from 20 years ago is brought back in because you see the past through rose-colored glasses. You have a fight, you know, any little conflict. People feel like, oh, I have all these options. Part of that is technology because you've got everybody in your phone. There's never any disconnect from former relationships. It's a mess. So I heard that. I think and you know, also the issue of when it came up with abuse, I think the word abuse, like if somebody's being abused in my book, that situation needs to end. However, we're talking about physical abuse. However, I think about my grandparents, and you know, my mom and I laugh about it, but my grandma used to chase my grandfather around the house with a loaf of Italian bread that was stale, and she'd be like, boom, boom, boom. And we all laughed about it. But in modern days, that would be like, that's abusive. You know, it wasn't abusive then. It was like her. And every now and then she'd crack him one, to be perfectly honest. She was like a little Italian old lady. I never saw him hit her, but she'd crack him one. And it would be in mostly jest. But there was also like, you know, there was some level of just that was the culture. They were married forever until the day they died. And that I wouldn't, knowing them and seeing their situation, I wouldn't say that was abusive. So I think that word in and of itself, also when you talk about mental abuse, that word gets like very slippery slope. Like, is that someone who got into a fight once and said, you're a jerk? Like now that's mentally abusive. So I think what I heard from you is like, there's this slippery slope now. Everything is being called abuse. Maybe we should sit back and just remember to take our relationships seriously and only stop those relationships if there's really something going on that's damaging.
It's spot on. Because like anybody who's dating right now, if you talk to a girl who recently broke up with a guy, what was he? He was a narcissist and he was toxic. Every single girl is saying that 9 times out of 10. And when you're looking at these situations when a girl breaks up with a guy and she's like, well, I want to talk about what I did wrong in the relationship first. When does that ever happen?
Never.
He was just the most awful tyrant, and she was just the innocent victim.
Angelic.
Holding it together for society.
She's got the halo and he's got the devil's horns, right?
And the reality is so far from that, because a lot of people are going to have trouble with relationships, and there is a distribution of accountability for if a relationship goes south, and it's not 50-50. You know, sometimes men do more problems than women, sometimes women do more problems than men. But at the end of the day, going back to it, who is the one breaking up families in America? Who is the one initiating these divorces? It's not men.
Yeah. My only caveat to what you had said would have been, I mean, for me, like a man should never hit a woman.
For sure.
And I always say like, that you can't tolerate as a woman. I can't imagine this. I've never been in a situation where there's domestic violence, but it's got to be very scary to be in a situation where a guy who's much bigger and stronger than you, even if they hit you lightly, I mean, that's just terrifying in my view.
For sure.
So I always tell, you know, women, you can't stay, especially if you have children in a household where there is abuse, you got to get out for the safety of that child and for the safety of yourself. So I think had you caveated it, I mean, and maybe that's not how you feel, but had you caveated it with just, hey, physical abuse of any kind is not okay. But what are we calling abuse now? Are we calling like, you know, you're an idiot? Now that's mental abuse, or like the slippery slope argument. I think a lot of people would relate to the slippery slope argument of like this quickness that people have to exit a relationship.
So let me ask you this. If a man were to hit a woman at any form during a relationship and he was like totally like, that was just an awful, awful, awful mistake, do you believe there's no coming back? Like we're on the divorce path and we have to go down this path. There's no forgiveness.
I mean, you know, for me, I think so. I think that like physical abuse would be a line for me. Of course, you know, it depends on what the context of that is. You know, what is the guy, you know, is it like, you know, honey, don't do that? I mean, you know, is it a real, you know, that all requires context. But if it was a real hit intent to harm a woman, yeah, I think that for me, that would be a line.
So what about for
us.
the women who have worked through that? Are they like
No,
lesser
I think
women?
listen, and I think there are cases where guys guys can acknowledge like they did something wrong, and it literally never happens again, right? There are cases like that too, and I'm certainly not going to tell women what to do with their own personal situation. You know your husband, you know your situation, but more often than not, I think that presents as like a pattern, and that's an unfortunate reality. And if there are children involved, even more so. I don't want that child to see that as normal. I don't want, say there's a little boy in the house now seeing, oh, daddy hits mommy, that's okay. Yeah. I don't want that child to feel fear. So for me, that would be a line. By the way, it would be the same way if a woman started hitting, even though a woman can't hurt a man in the same way. Yeah. I don't like physical violence.
I'm baiting you for something. So
I'm sure, yeah. So, but I would say the same. If a woman is physically aggressive with you, I think you have to look at that a little bit differently than if you're just having a fight and people say things and, they curse and they call you names. That happens,
So I definitely understand where you're coming from. So I just look at it like this, right? A man's strength in life is physical. Yeah. Right? There's no way you're ever going to beat a guy 9 times out of 10, right? And sometimes when you have the power, there's an abuse of power. Mm-hmm. I think everybody trying to act like they're the most perfect saint, like for example the Steven Crowder situation or something like along those lines. Everybody from the outside is pretending they're this perfect saint from the outside, like saying, no, I would never do something like that, and this is absolutely forgivable. They're pretending to be like this false moral authority that they don't even hold themselves to that same standard. What I'm trying to say is like, yes, men's physical strength is their power, and sometimes it does get abused, right? But if you were to take that exact same situation and look at women, what is women's physical strength? It's psychological.
Oh, yeah. They wage warfare on men.
Women absolutely torment guys.
Oh, agreed.
Way more. If there was like a physical manifestation of like the mental abuse that men go through modern day times, these dudes would just be in the ICU. Because, I mean, the way that a woman will go and like your best friend's photos, she'll start talking to guys. She'll unfollow you on Instagram or block you or start like, taking your like emotionally vulnerable text messages and putting them in the group chat for her girlfriends to make fun of you and post that on Instagram as well. That's happening way more. That right there is happening at least 15 to 20 times more than all domestic violence cases in the world combined. I can guarantee that.
My challenge with divorce, because ultimately divorce hurts children, right? So you want, I know Pearl gets a heat a lot of times for talking about staying in a relationship when there's cheating. And I understand that. Listen, cheating would, I have a monogamous relationship with my husband. I would not be okay with cheating. Good. He would not be okay with cheating. We know that. I do understand the dynamic, though. I've had friends that have gone through situations where there was a one-time instance of cheating and they have children and they don't want to break up their family. And I honor and respect their decision in that respect. And oftentimes it doesn't happen again. It oftentimes is something that happens once and then, people realize I've got more to lose.
Was it the guy or the girl in those situations?
In those situations, it was the guy. Okay. But I know that oftentimes it is not the guy and it is the woman doing the cheating. And I also then get into a term of like, what is cheating?
Get some context.
Then it's like, what is cheating too? Because then it can also be, how do we define cheating? Is it just physical? Is it like a woman on the side having a bunch of Instagram relationships? All of that stuff.
Yeah.
But and I don't even know where I was going with this when we started this conversation.
Basically, don't beat your wife. Okay, that's just what I want to go ahead and reiterate that. Don't beat your wife.